General Hospital will reveal interesting facts on Tuesday, April 15, 2025. First, Elizabeth walked into the familiar house with a tired but happy smile. After many days in the hospital, the feeling of returning home was incomparable. The cozy family space was filled with aromas from favorite dishes that Lucky and the children had carefully prepared. They had decorated the living room with colorful banners and a large sign with, "Welcome Home Mom," written in the children's adorable scrawl. Although the doctors had allowed Elizabeth to leave the hospital, the recovery process would be long. The external wounds had begun to heal, but the persistent pain remained, reminding her of the horrific event she had just experienced. As Elizabeth sat down on the sofa, her body still ached from the accident. Sometimes, she would still startle when hearing a car brake suddenly outside, memories of the accident flooding back like an uncontrollable torrent. Lucky understood the disappointment in Elizabeth's eyes when she couldn't return to work at the hospital, a place she had been devoted to for years and was an essential part of her life. As a dedicated nurse, being homebound for recovery made Elizabeth feel useless, even though she knew her body needed time to heal. She missed the hospital corridors, missed the feeling of helping others, and especially missed the sense of independence that her work provided. Being someone who was always strong and self-reliant, Elizabeth now had to depend on others for the simplest tasks. This hurt her pride more than the physical wounds. She felt as if she was abandoning her colleagues and patients, although reason told her she needed time to recover. Lucky was always by her side, gently reminding his wife that her body had undergone a major trauma and no one expected her to recover immediately. He cared for her with boundless love, from administering medication on time to small gestures like a hot cup of tea in the morning or a new book to help her relax. While the children happily prepared dinner, Lucky took Elizabeth to the balcony where they could talk privately. He was worried not only about his wife's physical health but also about the troubles that might arise after the accident. He had received some suspicious calls and had a feeling that Ava was monitoring their situation. Christina, who had an old grudge against the family, had also begun appearing in unexpected places, as if waiting for an opportunity to cause trouble. Lucky didn't want to worry Elizabeth, but he thought they needed to be vigilant because Ava and Christina might take advantage of Elizabeth's condition to create difficulties for the family. Elizabeth nodded wearily as she listened to her husband's concerns. She was all too familiar with Ava's schemes and Christina's hatred. Even in her weakest moment, she still had to face threats from the past. However, Elizabeth maintained her belief that they would overcome every challenge, as they had done before. Lucky embraced his wife, careful not to touch the wounds that still hurt. He knew that no matter how many difficulties lay ahead, they would face them together. Elizabeth's recovery process wouldn't be easy, and the troubles from Ava and Christina would only complicate things, but their love had overcome many greater challenges. As the sunset shone through the window, Lucky and Elizabeth returned to the house, where the laughter of their children echoed. In that moment, all worries seemed to disappear. The aroma from dinner spread throughout the house, creating the sense of peace that Elizabeth had missed during her time in the hospital. Their children had prepared a special meal with all of Elizabeth's favorite dishes, from hot chicken soup to homemade chocolate cake for dessert. Despite still being in pain and worried about potential troubles, Elizabeth felt lucky to have her family beside her. She knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but with Lucky and the children's support, she had enough strength to face anything, including Ava and Christina's schemes. Second, the conversation with Lois significantly changed Chase's perspective on the current situation. Initially, Chase was furious upon learning the truth that Brooke Lynn had a child with Dante without ever revealing it to him. This shock was even more painful as Chase had just discovered he was infertile and couldn't have children with Brooke Lynn. His wife's concealment of such a big secret made Chase feel betrayed and raised many questions about their relationship. However, after hearing Lois's sincere confession and apology, Chase's view gradually changed. Lois explained the difficult circumstances at the time, when Brooke Lynn was still a teenage girl not ready for motherhood, and the decision to give up the child was extremely painful for her. Chase began to understand that Lois, as a mother, had to make a difficult decision to protect her daughter and truly had no other choice at that time. The truth about Gio being Brooklyn and Dante's son came as a huge shock to everyone. Chase found it particularly hard to accept because it involved not only his wife's past but also Dante, his colleague and close friend. However, after reflecting on Lois's explanation, Chase began to view the issue with more empathy, understanding that this was a complex situation that no one wanted. He realized that holding on to anger wouldn't solve anything and would only create more pain for everyone involved. Meanwhile, Brooklyn had devised a plan to help Dante accept this truth more easily. She realized that revealing to Dante that he had an adult son he knew nothing about for over 2 decades would be a terrible shock. Brooklyn understood Dante's character well and knew he would feel robbed of the chance to be a father and participate in his son's life. She worried about how this revelation might affect Dante's mental health and his relationships with others, especially with Gio, who had grown up without knowing his biological parents. Brooklyn's plan focused on revealing the truth gradually and with preparation, allowing Dante time to absorb the information and build a relationship with Gio before knowing he was his biological son. She thought about arranging casual meetings where Dante and Gio could interact naturally and perhaps discover shared interests or personality traits. This approach would give Dante the opportunity to know his son as a person first, which might make the eventual revelation less overwhelming. Brooklyn also wanted to ensure that Gio was psychologically prepared before learning about his true origins, as he currently had no idea he was adopted. Although many challenges lay ahead, the conversation with Lois helped Chase better understand the circumstances and view Brooklyn with more empathy. He began to realize that although his wife had hidden her past, it was a painful decision she had to live with for many years. The weight of this secret had clearly affected Brooklyn deeply, and Chase could now see the pain behind her eyes whenever the subject came up. He recognized that his wife needed his support now more than ever, as she navigated this complicated situation involving people she cared deeply about. Now, instead of focusing on anger, Chase is trying to support Brooklyn in facing her past and finding the best way to resolve this complex situation for everyone involved, especially Gio and Dante. He offered to help with Brooklyn's plan, suggesting ways to make the interactions between Dante and Gio seem natural and unforced. Chase's background in law enforcement gave him insight into how people process shocking information, and he used this knowledge to help refine Brooklyn's approach. Together, they hoped to minimize the pain this revelation would cause while giving both Dante and Gio the chance to build a meaningful father-son relationship in the future. Third, Alexis Davis sat in her office, her mind racing with worries. She had just received a call from Ava Jerome, and what she heard left her stunned. Ava had named an enormous sum of money in exchange for her silence about Rick and Elizabeth's accident. Alexis knew that her daughter, Christina, had caused that accident, and now Ava held all the cards. The amount Ava demanded far exceeded Alexis's ability to pay, and she knew this wouldn't be the last time Ava made such demands. While Alexis struggled with her decision, Trina Robinson was searching for Ava throughout the city. The young woman needed advice about her relationship with Kai, especially as she noticed Kai becoming increasingly involved with Drew Kane. Trina worried that Drew, with his experience and charm, might negatively influence Kai. She hoped that Ava, with her sharpness and understanding of complex relationships, could help her see the situation more clearly. Alexis decided to seek help from Sonny Corinthos. Although their relationship was complicated, they both cared deeply about Christina. As Alexis explained the situation, she could see the concern clearly visible on Sonny's face. He understood the severity of the issue and the consequences that Christina might face if the truth were exposed. Meanwhile, Trina finally found Ava at the art gallery. As Trina began sharing about her relationship with Kai, Ava listened attentively. Ava realized that Trina's situation was more complex than the young woman perceived, especially with Drew's presence in the picture. Ava considered carefully before giving advice, knowing that her words could profoundly influence Trina's decisions. Back to Alexis and Sonny, they were trying to find a solution to protect Christina without surrendering to Ava's unreasonable demands. Sonny suggested using his connections to pressure Ava, but Alexis worried about the legality of this approach. They knew that time was running out and they needed to act quickly before Ava could make any other moves. As night fell over Port Charles, our characters all faced difficult decisions. Alexis had to balance protecting her daughter and maintaining her integrity. Trina was struggling with her feelings for Kai and concerns about Drew's influence. And somewhere in the city, Ava was quietly plotting her next move, knowing she held power that could change many lives. Tonight would be a long night for everyone, and tomorrow promised to bring new challenges. Finally, Vaughn brought a very special guest, Professor Henry Dalton. He had just appeared in Port Charles and was teaching the environmental physics class that WSB had arranged for Josslyn Jax to join mid-semester. This was part of WSB's plan, although Josslyn didn't fully understand the true purpose behind this mission. The professor's arrival had been sudden, with little information provided about his background or credentials beyond what appeared in the university's official announcement. Josslyn would have to work extremely hard to get acquainted with Professor Dalton and impress him enough to become his research assistant. This task was not simple, especially when she joined the class midway, when relationships and dynamics in the class had already been established. She would need to demonstrate superior academic abilities and professionalism to attract the attention of this demanding professor. The competition would be fierce, as many students had already been vying for the coveted research assistant position since the beginning of the semester. Vaughn had emphasized the importance of Josslyn finding her own solution and completing this mission. He made it clear that this assignment was crucial, though he didn't explain all aspects in detail. Josslyn understood that her performance would be evaluated not just academically but also as part of her WSB training. The pressure was immense, as failure was not an option in the eyes of her handlers at the agency. Professor Dalton appeared professional and knowledgeable on the surface, commanding respect in academic circles. His lectures were challenging, and he maintained high standards for all students. Josslyn quickly realized she would need to demonstrate exceptional abilities to stand out among her classmates and capture the professor's attention. His teaching style was rigorous, often pushing students to their intellectual limits with complex problems and theoretical concepts that went beyond the standard curriculum. The first day in Professor Dalton's class was intimidating for Josslyn. As a mid-semester transfer, all eyes were on her when she walked into the lecture hall. Professor Dalton barely acknowledged her presence, simply nodding when she introduced herself before continuing with his lecture on quantum environmental impacts. The material was advanced, and Josslyn found herself struggling to keep up with concepts that the other students had been studying for months. After class, Josslyn attempted to speak with Professor Dalton about the possibility of becoming his research assistant. His response was cool and dismissive, informing her that several students had already applied for the position and that he had nearly made his decision. He suggested that if she wanted to be considered, she would need to submit a comprehensive research proposal by the end of the week, a nearly impossible task given her limited time to familiarize herself with his work. Determined to succeed, Josslyn spent the next several days in the university library, researching Professor Dalton's published works and developing a proposal that might catch his attention. She noticed that his research focused on environmental physics applications that could potentially have dual-use capabilities, technologies that could benefit the environment but might also have military applications. This realization gave her the first hint about why WSB might be interested in him. What Josslyn didn't know was that Professor Dalton's past harbored secrets that would be revealed over time. These secrets were related to why WSB was interested in him and why they had sent Josslyn to infiltrate his class. Behind the academic and professional exterior was a person with complex motives that Josslyn would have to discover. His research, while groundbreaking, had attracted attention from various intelligence agencies for reasons that went beyond academic interest. Vaughn had warned that Josslyn could face serious danger if Professor Dalton revealed his sinister nature later on. This was not just a simple academic mission but one fraught with risk, requiring Josslyn to be vigilant and cautious in all interactions with the professor. As Josslyn began her mission, she had no idea that the road ahead would be full of surprises and dangers. The stakes were higher than she realized, with international implications that extended far beyond the walls of Port Charles University. As the week progressed, Josslyn noticed subtle but concerning behaviors from Professor Dalton. He often took private phone calls that seemed to agitate him, and she once observed him meeting with a stranger in a secluded area of the campus, exchanging what appeared to be documents. These observations only reinforced Vaughn's warnings and strengthened Josslyn's resolve to succeed in her mission, not just for her WSB training but potentially for national security reasons that she was only beginning to comprehend.